Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David, and this is my card whisperer, Ruud.
Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about a fun and effective EDH deck you can build without breaking the bank. Now today's deck is going to be an elemental token deck, so you're going to build a lot of elementals, and the deck is going to punish your opponents for board wiping you. As with all our decks, there's just one additional build rule, and that is that all cards need to be under $1 in price, with the exception of our commander. So let's take a look at the commander, David.
And we have a doozy of a commander for you today. We've got Omnath Locus of Rage for 3 generic mana, 2 red and 2 green. So for 7 mana, we get a 5/5 legendary elemental. Now this guy's got landfall, which means that whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, we get to put down a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. Now this is a huge token for just placing a land onto the battlefield. Additionally, whenever Omnath Locus of Rage or another elemental you control dies, this card is going to deal 3 damage to target creature or player. So what is going to be the role of the commander? The role of the commander is going to be to generate loads and loads of 5/5 elemental tokens, and also to be casting basically a lightning bolt for each dead elemental. So that protects us from removal and also from board wipes. Now, one important thing to remember is that when Omnath dies and you choose to have it go to the command zone rather than the graveyard, then this will not trigger for Omnath. But if there's a board wipe and you choose to have Omnath go to the command zone and the elementals die, then he does see all the other elementals die, so you do get to deal 3 points of damage to target creature or player for each elemental that dies that way. So, what kind of cards do we need to make this deck work?
We will have 12 other elemental cards. We don't need a lot of those because, of course, Omnath is going to build a lot of elementals. We have 18 land ramp. Of course, we're going to need additional lands to trigger the landfall of Omnath. Then we have 11 removal cards. Then we have 17 utility cards, some synergy with the elementals, of course. And we have 41 lands.
Absolutely. So what is the ideal turn progression?
Well, turn 1, mostly we'll do nothing.
Oh,
Turn 2 and turn 3 will both be ramping. Then turn 4 we might have some additional draw. Turn 5 we will do some removal, and then turn 6 we will cast Omnath.
Yeah.
And after that we're going to build a lot of elementals. So maybe destroy all lands and gain lands equal to lands destroyed that way to build a lot of elementals.
Or deal lots of damage to creatures. But
Something
anyway,
like that.
loads of stuff that we can do. So let's have a look first at the elementals. We divided the elementals into 3 categories. One which creates tokens, the other which are just useful elementals, and last one which are big elementals. To start off with the ones that create tokens, we have Spawn Writhe for 3 mana. We have a 2/2 elemental with trample, and whenever this guy deals combat damage to a player, we get to put a token that's a copy of this guy onto the battlefield. Now you may think, hey, these are just 2/2s with trample, not such a big deal. However, remember that if we get this guy early, we're able to deal damage to our opponents. They're going to multiply. We get to make more every time, doubling. And then Omnath's on the battlefield. Removing those is going to be a buttload of hurt to our opponent's creatures and or to their face.
Very nice. Then we have Zendikar's Royal for 5 mana as an enchantment. And it's a little bit the same as Omnath, but it will create 2/2 green elemental creature tokens whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. So additional elementals, of course, just like David said, when they die, they will do a lot of damage. So that's really great.
Yeah, and then it is one of the all-star cards in this deck already so early. Rite of the Raging Storm for 5 mana. It's an enchantment that states, creatures named Lightning Rager can't attack you or a planeswalker you control. Okay, you think, why did they put that first? Let's go to the most important part, and that is at the beginning of each player's upkeep, so not only your own, but everybody's, that player puts a 5/1 red elemental creature token named Lightning Rager onto the battlefield. It has trample, haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this creature. So now why is this so good? That means, okay, your opponents get them too, and they can use them to attack each other, which is great, because they're going to be killing each other with it. For you, it's great because you get a 5/1 to attack people's face with it, and plus at the end of the turn, if it didn't die, you still sacrifice it, which means it still dies, which means Omnath still gets to deal 3 points of damage to target creature or player. Nice.
Very good card, of course, very synergetic. Then we have Incandescent Soulstoke for 3 mana. It's an elemental, it's a shaman. It gives all your elemental creatures +1/+1, so it's an anthem. You almost only will have exclusively elementals. And it's a 2/2. And for 2 mana and tapping it, you may put an elemental creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste until end of turn, but you have to sacrifice this at the next end step. I don't know how many times you will use this, but there could be a lot of instances where you could, especially with something like 2 cards later on, we will see, the Phyto Titan. But it's a really nice card, especially for the Anthem.
Yeah, in general, I really like using this as kind of 2 mana. You're going to use any one of your elemental creature cards that you have in your hand as a lightning bolt, because it's going to come in. Of course, it's got haste, so you can still attack with it, which is a nice little bonus. Maybe it's got an enter the battlefield ability, also a nice little bonus. But it always allows you to have an elemental dying that turn, which otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. Maybe if you don't have your sacrifice outlets, and of course that 3 damage bolt to some creature's face. Maybe just exactly what you need at that point in time. Plus, of course, having all your elemental tokens being 6/6s, and Omnath being a 6/6 as well. But this guy on the battlefield is nothing to sniff at. Very useful as part of the useful guys. Next, we have Whisperwood Elemental for 5 mana. We get a 4/4 elemental, so that's a good body for the price. Additionally, at the beginning of your end step, you get to manifest the top card of your library, which means we get to grab the top card, we're going to look at it, we're going to put it down, face down onto the battlefield, and it's going to be a 2/2 just creature with no other special abilities. And we can, at any given point in time, we can pay the converted mana cost of the card to flip it over if it is a creature. If it's something else, then we can't flip it over. But if it is, then we can, and otherwise we just get a 2/2. Additionally, we can sacrifice this guy, so this Whisperwood Elemental, and then until the end of turn, face up non-token creatures you control gain. When this creature dies, manifest the top card of your library. So in essence, if you've got this guy, you've got a couple of elementals. When somebody board wipes, I'm going to first sacrifice this guy, and then for every creature you've got that's not one of your tokens, that's not one of your manifest things, you get to manifest the cards. So you get to replace those with other 2/2 creatures, so it's pretty nice. Make sure that when there's board wipes, you don't get blown out entirely.
Really, really good. Then we have Phyto Titan for 6 mana. It's a 7/2 plant elemental, and when it dies, you get to return it to the battlefield tapped under your control at the beginning of the next upkeep. So that's also only your upkeep, of course. So with an Incandescent Soulstoke, like I just said, it will be really useful. And well, if you have your commander, when it dies, it will deal 3 damage, and you can do this over and over again.
Exactly, every turn. If you've got a sacrifice outlet, even better. Next card, Cloud Thresher for, let's see, how much is that? 6 mana. We have a 7/7 elemental. And this guy's got flash, which is pretty cool. Maybe we can cast it as a surprise. People don't know we can use it to block, and it can especially block very well because it's a 7/7 and it has reach. So it means it's going to also be able to block those flyers, and we all know flyers aren't this big. Definitely not going to be able to stop Cloud Thresher. Additionally, when this guy enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each creature with flying in each player. That includes you, so you got to take that 2 damage. But it's going to be able to get rid of all those annoying flying spirit tokens and whatnot. Additionally, finally, it also has an evoke cost, which means we can cast this guy for 4 mana and enters the battlefield. It does what it needs to do, but then we do need to sacrifice it right away, which means that sometimes we may want to do that because we can deal 2 points of damage to each creature and player, and then we have to sacrifice it, and Omnath says, okay, well then we're going to deal another 3 points of damage. You can do a total of 5 damage to a flying creature of your choice.
For just 4 mana, of course.
Not too shabby.
Then we have Tornado Elemental. For 7 mana, it's a 6/6 elemental creature, and when it enters, it deals 6 damage to each creature with flying, which is a lot. Kills almost any flyer.
Everything in the air dies, yeah.
And you may have this creature assign combat damage as though it were not blocked.
Bonus. Yeah.
Could be a nice bonus.
All in all, we don't like flyers because, of course, we're nice little ground elementals in this thing. So dealing either 2 damage or 6 damage to all the flyers is loads of fun. Doesn't affect us at all. Then we go to the really, really big elementals. The first one is Scourge of Gaia Reach. For 5 mana, we get a 3/3 elemental. I mean, this guy's 3. That's not so big. That's not so big. But this guy gets +1/+1 for each creature your opponents control. Now, we're playing multiplayer, and we're playing Commander, where you're going to have a couple of people playing maybe with lots of tokens, and just the sheer amount of having 3 or more players against you means this thing is going to be huge.
True. Yeah. Very, very
Spot
nice.
removal needs to be used, because otherwise if we're able to give it a trample, then people are dying.
We do have some ways to do that,
Yeah.
which is quite important for our elementals to get through, of course. Which is also true for Zendikar Incarnate. For 4 mana, it's
X4,
X4 elemental creature, and its power is equal to the number of lands you control. We're gonna spam a lot of lands, so it's gonna be quite big in its power.
Yeah, not the toughness too much, but considering that it can come down as early as turn 4 already, there's nothing to sniff at. Next we have Rumble Hulk for 6 mana. We get a XX elemental, and this guy's power and toughness is also equal to the number of lands you control, but this guy's also, his toughness grows along with it. So this thing's going to be 9, 10, 10 easy. Additionally, it's got Blood Rush, which means that for 3 mana, we get to discard this card, and then attacking creature that we control, we get to give it +X till the end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. Now you can imagine Omnath is attacking, and somebody says, it's just 5 damage, I'm not going to do anything about it, or maybe they've already taken a little bit of commander damage, and then you're going to Blood Rush this card on it, and then all of a sudden that's lethal commander damage, and they're dead.
Yeah, that's especially a nice way to use this. Then we have the last card of this cycle of the elementals. It's Molimo Smarrow Sorcerer. For 7 mana, it's an elemental. It's also XX, it does have trample this time, and its power and toughness are also equal to the number of lands you control, but this time with trample.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does.
Going to be doing tons and tons of damage. A great bargain. Now, we just saw already that lands are important for us, not only for Omnath, but also these big creatures that grow with them. So let's have a look at the land ramp.
We've divided the land ramp cards into single land ramp and multiple land ramp cards. So let's take a look at the first card. It's Sakura Tribe Elder. It's a 1/1 Snake Shaman, but you can sacrifice it at any time and search your library for a basic land card to put it into play tapped. So it's ramp 1 additional land.
Yeah.
You can block with it, and then you can just sack it.
I was just about to say. Very good. Very nice. Now we have the next card, Rampant Growth, also for 2 mana. It's a sorcery this time. It allows us to search for a basic land, put it into the battlefield tapped, and then we shuffle our library, so we get kind of the same effect, but without the bonus of being able to block for 1 turn.
True. Then we have Far Seek. For 2 mana we get to search our library for a basic land card, with the exception of a forest. So we can actually only search for a mountain, of course, and put it onto the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, it's kind
Pretty
of
easy.
Kind of Rampant Growth, but we can't get the forest.
True.
Yeah. Next, we have Search for Tomorrow. For 3 mana, we get to search for a basic land, put it into the battlefield tap, and shuffle our library. But this one has Suspend 2 for 1 green mana, which means actually for 1 mana, we can put it onto the battlefield with 2 suspend counters on it. At each turn of our upkeep, we get to remove one of those, and then when the last one's removed, we get to play it for free. Remember then that we can either play it for the 3 mana or for the 1, and then 2 turns later it comes in, and that the land does not come in tapped.
True.
That's good.
Then we have Farhaven Elf. For 3 mana, it's a 1/1 Elf Druid, and when it enters the battlefield, we can search our library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Very nice.
Yeah, this guy does stick around for 1 block and then dies probably. Growth Spasm for 3 mana, also search for a basic land, also puts it in the battlefield tap, but now we get a 0/1 Eldrazi creature token in addition to that, and this guy we get to sacrifice it for 1 colorless mana, which is nice. It actually kind of ramps us for 1 turn, 1 extra.
True, very nice. Then we have Silverglade Elemental. For 5 mana, it's an elemental creature, and when it enters, you may search your library for a forest card, only a forest, and put it onto the battlefield. This one does not come in tapped.
No, exactly, and it's a 4/4.
Elemental.
So think about it, when you've got Omnath on the battlefield, you play this guy, you actually get a 4/4 elemental and a 5/5 elemental and a forest card untapped.
Yeah. And of course, we lied when we said just 12 elementals. There are a little more elementals.
That's got to be a surprise. You can't just... Of course there's more. They're always sneaky, those elementals. I don't know if that's the quality of elementals, but they're in there. There's more elementals in there. Now let's have a look at the cards that give us multiple lands. Animus Awakening is first for X and a green. We get to pay X mana and then reveal the top X cards of our library, putting all lands from among them into the battlefield tapped, and the rest at the bottom of our library in any order. Now, if we have Spell Mastery, it means if we have 2 or more instants or sorceries in our graveyard, then we get to also untap those lands. We get to use them to cast more awesome spells. And actually, considering, as you saw, there's already going to be loads of instant sorceries, there's a good chance that's the case.
Yeah.
Even if it's not the case, you still want to pump all your mana in here, get as many lands as possible when Omnath is there, because each one of those is a juicy 5/5 elemental.
Yeah, of course, when you do have Omnath, you will have 7 or more lands, so it will be 6 cards, a lot of lands among them. So very nice. Then we have Colony Heart Expedition. For 2 mana, it's an enchantment. It also has a landfall, just like our commander. And this one states, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a quest counter on this Colony Heart Expedition card. And when there are 3 of those on Calling Heart Expedition, you can sacrifice this card and search your library for 2 basic land cards and you put them onto the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, pretty nice. Gives us those 2 lands. You don't have to do anything. You pop it on the table and then just a few turns later you got it. Then we have Frontier Guide for 2 mana. It's a 1/1 Elf Scout. This is one of the guys that's helping out Omnath because he's such a great little elf. It has the cool ability of having 4 mana, tapping it, and then we can search our library for a basic land card and put it into the battlefield tap. So basically, instead of paying 2 mana, we have to pay 4 mana and tapping it for a rampant growth effect. Yeah. But we can do it every turn. So for 4 mana, we get a land and an elemental. Nice.
Very nice. Then we have Fertilid for 3 mana. It's an elemental again.
We're not going to say that
the
every time
battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. For 2 mana you can remove a +1/+1 counter from Fertilid. You don't have to tap it. And then you can search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. You could actually do this the next turn 2 times in a row.
Exactly. And then it dies. And then you get to deal 3 damage with Omnath.
Exactly.
Pretty cool. Then we have Nissa's Pilgrimage for 3 mana. Search live for 2 forest cards, basic forest cards. We're going to reveal those, put 1 into the battlefield, tap the other into our hands. We got 2, put 1 down, get the other one in our hand. But if we have Spell Mastery, then we're going to look for 3. And we're going to put 1 on the battlefield and 2 into our hand. Pretty nice.
Pretty nice. Then we have Harrow for 3 mana. It's an instant card, instant speed. Could be nice. You can cast it, when you cast it you have to sacrifice a land, but you can search library for 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield.
Yeah, you say might be useful. I think it's going to be very useful because when you cast this, you can do this when somebody attacks you. They think you don't have very much to block with. They think, oh, you're not going to use Omnath to block with because you're going to lose it. And then doing this, all of a sudden you got 2 5/5s you're going to be able to throw in front of your opponent. Pretty cool. Or opponent's creatures.
They could be flying, but it can be
sure.
really nice.
Or unblockable.
True.
Or they could have Shadow. Yeah, then we can go on for days. Anyway, next we have Primal Growth for 3 mana. We get to search our library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield, tap and shuffle our library. But we can also kick it by sacrificing a creature, and then we get to instead search our library for 2 basic land cards, put them into the battlefield, tap. So actually pretty sweet because for us, sacrificing a creature isn't such a bad thing. We can sacrifice one of our 5/5 elementals, or even maybe some of the smaller elementals that we get from the other enchantment. And then what do we get? We get even more elementals, plus we get to do extra damage.
Very nice, very nice. Then we have Clear the Land for 3 mana. It's a sorcery. Each player reveals the top 5 cards of his or her library and then puts into play tapped all land cards revealed. So you will have most benefit from this. Your opponents will have some benefit.
Yeah, well, help out really people a little bit,
True.
Help them out a little bit. But we're probably going to get more lands anyway. And when we play late game, our lands have the potential to also be 5/5 elementals.
True.
Then we have Explosive Vegetation, and in this deck, that's very aptly named, of course, because our elementals explode. For 4 mana, we get to search our library for 2 basic land cards, put them in the battlefield tapped. All right, there we go. 2 nice little juicy elementals.
Then we have Hunting Wilds for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. This also searches your library for 2 forest cards and you put them into play tapped. You can also kick it for 4 additional mana, and then you can untap all forests that you put into play, and they become 3/3 green creatures with haste.
Yeah, and that's not till the end of turn, so they stay creatures. I recommend you don't do that. I say just play the 4 mana, get your 2 forests, and call it a day, because if somebody board wipes you or something, then you're going to lose all those lands. I don't know. I mean, I would only do it if you could kill your opponent with those lands that turn. And then finally, for the multiple land ramp, we've got From the Ashes for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. This one actually doesn't ramp you, but it does get you a lot of lands because we get to destroy all non-basic lands. We got a whole bunch of non-basic lands in this deck as well, and our opponents also have lots of non-basic lands. Now, for each land destroyed this way, its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield. So that's not tapped. You just put it into the battlefield. And each player who searches the library like this has to shuffle it, obviously. What's good about this is that your opponents may have those guild gates or special lands with special abilities that they might be very valuable for them to be able to have the colors that they require or the abilities that those lands have. We're going to destroy all of those. Not everybody's only got basic lands. And of course, when we do that, when Omnath's on the battlefield, we're going to get a ton of lands that come in, and that of course equals fun elementals.
Very nice. Those were the land ramp cards, so let's take a look at the removal cards.
We divided the removal cards into 2 categories, one that's good against creatures, the other against non-creatures. We're going to start with the ones that are good for creatures. First card is Lignify. For 2 mana, it's an enchantment aura that states enchanted creature is a 0/4 tree folk with no abilities. Now we all know that people have their commanders, and when we kill them, then they get to put them back into the command zone. This is a very, very nasty, evil enchantment that makes sure that that thing does not go into the command zone, but stays on the battlefield, but has ceased to have any usefulness to either man nor beast.
Yeah, it will become a really ugly creature too, as you can see.
Yeah, thirsty too.
Next card is Mizzium Mortars. For 2 mana, we get to deal 4 damage to target creature we don't control, but, well, of course in Commander, we're gonna need to overload this card. For 6 mana, it deals 4 damage to each creature you don't control, so it kills most creatures.
Yeah, very nice. Next, we have Ground Assault. For a measly 2 mana, it deals. It's a sorcery. It deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. So that's always going to be enough to kill whatever you want. For only 2 mana, pretty sweet.
Then we have Savage Twister. For a red and a green mana and X mana, it deals X damage to each creature. So it could kill all your elementals. Could be helpful. Maybe you can kill your opponents with it. Otherwise, you'll just make X be 4.
Yeah. Exactly, and then you kill all the 4 or less stuff and all our elementals, and I'm not staying nice and happy.
True.
Then we have Starstorm for X and 2 red. Starstorm is an instant this time, and it deals X damage to each creature. We can also cycle it for 3 mana, and then we discard this card and draw a card. However, I recommend that you just keep it in your hand if you're not going to use it, because it's a very useful card.
Yeah, it could be really useful late game.
Yeah.
Also. Then we have Comet Storm for 2 red mana and X. It's an instant. You can choose target creature or player and choose another creature or player for each time you kick this card. It has multi-kickers, you could do this multiple times. It costs you 1 mana per kicker.
Yeah.
And it deals X damage to each of them. So for example, you will pay 2 red and 4 as X is 4, and you will pay 1 extra mana to deal 4 damage to 2 creatures.
Yeah, or players, which is pretty sweet. Yeah,
true.
so that's going to be doing tons and tons of damage. And you can also, of course, with these X cards that we're looking at right now, we've got lots and lots of land. We're going to have lots and lots of mana late game, so it's not unusual, for example, with the Comet Storm, to just be able to kill our opponents with that.
Yeah, to make it like X is 10 or something.
Yeah, and then you say, okay, you take 10, you take 10, you take 10, all right, you 3 guys are dead. And then finally we have where Ancient's Tread for 5 mana. It's an enchantment that states whenever a creature with power 5 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may have this card deal 5 damage to a creature or player. Now, what a surprise that Omnath and his nice little elementals are all 5/5s, because when each one comes in, we're going to be dealing 5 points of damage. And of course later when they die, we're going to be doing 3 points of damage. This is going to be doing so much damage.
A lot.
Yeah, and of course we can do it straight to our opponent's faces as well. So a great card for ending the game when you're playing all those lands with Omnath on the battlefield. Those are the cards we use against creatures. Now, Ruud, what's the first one against for the non-creatures?
It's Vandal Blast. For 1 red mana, we get to destroy target artifact we don't control. You can also overload it, which we will do that, I think. And you will kill all artifacts for just 5 mana.
Yeah, and it's of
you
course
don't control.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great card, huh? Vandal Blast. It's amazing. I mean, we're playing a multiplayer EDH, so people are going to be playing their artifact ramp, and those are all going to be gone. Then we have Hull Breach for 2 mana. It's a sorcery. We get to choose one. Either we get to destroy target artifact, or we get to destroy target enchantment, or we can do both. Yeah. Why not? I think we could probably do both.
Yeah. It could also state destroy target artifact and or enchantment, but I don't know. Really nice.
It's an old card.
It's old. Then we got Ingot Chewer for 5 mana. It's a 3/3 elemental again.
Nice.
Really nice. I'm telling you that.
Why are you doing this?
Okay, when it enters, we get to destroy target artifact. We could also evoke this card, and we don't get the elemental, but we do get to destroy an artifact for just 1 red mana.
Yeah, and we do actually get the elemental for a split second when it comes in, and then it dies, so we do get to do 3 points of damage. So that's not too bad. For 1 mana, destroy an artifact, and we get to deal 3 points of damage.
True.
Then finally we have Wave of Vitriol for 7 mana. It's a sorcery. Now each player, this includes us, has to sacrifice all artifacts, enchantments, and non-basic lands. And then for each land we sacrifice this way, everybody gets to put down a basic land, so kind of like the other card that replaced them. But this one has the added bonus that we also get to destroy artifacts and enchantments.
Yeah, really nice.
Yeah. Use it carefully when, of course, you've got your own artifacts and enchantments.
Yeah, but we will have not a lot of those. We do have some, of course.
Yeah. And of course we play it if we want to.
Yeah. That were all the removal cards. Let's take a look at the utility cards. We divided the utility cards into sack outlets, protection cards, draw, and synergy cards. The first one is Goblin Bombardment. It's a sack outlet, of course. You get to put down an enchantment for 2 mana, and it states that you can sacrifice a creature, and then this card deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So basically you can just sack all your elementals to deal tons of damage.
Yeah, so each elemental now instead of 3 is 4 points of damage. Might get you just that range you need. Also what's nice is of course when your opponent decides to board wipe, or with an exile effect, then we can sacrifice all our creatures and say, hey, you know what, they're not being exiled now, they're still going to die, we're still going to do tons of damage. You can't avoid the damage by exiling our stuff because we have this sacrifice outlet. Next card we have Evolutionary Leap for 2 mana. It's an enchantment as well, and this one allows us to pay a green and then sacrifice a creature. Then we get to reveal from the top of our library our cards until we see a creature card, and we get to put that card into our hand and then shuffle our library. Put the rest at the bottom in a random order. Sorry, not shuffle our library. So what's really cool with this is you just make sure you've got green mana open for the amount of creatures you've got, and then when our opponent board wipes, either exile or regular board wipe, then what we're just going to do is we're going to pay the mana for each one of those creatures, and then we're going to get actual creature cards, even if those were creature tokens that they killed.
Really nice. Then we have Magmaul for 5 mana. It's a 4/4 elemental, and it states that for 1 mana you can sacrifice a non-land permanent, so your elementals again, to deal 1 damage to target creature or player.
Exactly. Then we go on to the protection cards. First one is Aspect of Mongoose for 2 mana. It's an enchantment aura, and it states that enchanted creature can't be the target of spells or abilities, so it gives the creature Shroud. And also when this card is put into the graveyard, we get to return it from the graveyard back to our hand, which is pretty nice. We're going to put it on Omnath. Should Omnath die not due to targeted removal, because Aspect of Mongoose will protect Omnath. Should it die to, for example, board wipe, then we're going to get Aspect of Mongoose back again, and then when we recast Omnath, we get to recast Aspect of Mongoose and protect it again.
True. Then we have Swiftfoot Boots for 2 mana. It's an equipment card you put down, and you can equip it for 1 to give a creature hexproof and haste. Pretty easy.
Yeah, the haste is nice, the bonus, but it's mostly just to protect Omnath. And then we have Whispersilk Cloak for 3 mana. It makes sure the creature is unblockable and gives the creature Shroud, which is nice, and the equip cost is only 2.
Very nice. The last of the protection card, Spellbreaker Behemoth for 4 mana. It's a 5/5 beast.
Yeah.
Beast this time.
Yeah.
It can be countered, and creature spells you control with power 5 or greater can be countered. So it states that Omnath and a lot of other elementals can be countered.
Yeah, tons and tons of elementals are going to be protected, and of course Omnath, super nice because one of the ways that people think, I don't want to take damage from all those creatures dying, I'll just counter it. But the thing is, with Spellbreaker Behemoth, they can't counter it anymore. Omnath will hit the battlefield, those big elementals will hit the battlefield, and then they're going to have to remove them, and then we're going to deal damage. So they're going to have a really tough time avoiding that when we've got Spellbreaker Behemoth on the battlefield. Then we have the first of our draw spells, and that's Elemental Bond for 3 mana. It's an enchantment. It had to be it because it's called Elemental Bond. And then whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, we'll get to draw a card. Well, whoop-de-doo, most of our creatures are power 5, so we're going to be drawing a card for each land token, and then we're going to draw a card.
Really nice. Then we have Kavu Lair for 3 mana. It's an enchantment, and this one states whenever a creature with power 4 or greater comes into play, its controller draws a card. So that's also your opponents.
Yeah, but we're going to get more. Yeah, exactly. And the same counts for Fecundity. For 3 mana, whenever it's an enchantment, states that whenever a creature dies, that controller may draw a card. So same story. This counts for everybody, but we're just going to get a much greater advantage out of this.
Then we have Seer's Sundial. Do I pronounce
Sundial.
Sundial. Okay. For 4 mana, it's an artifact, and it says that with landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 to draw a card. So it's a little mana intensive, but a lot of draw.
Exactly. Late game, when we're just pulling in lands, and we will be getting a lot of lands, it's going to be giving us an elemental. We're going to be paying 2. He's going to draw us a card. It's pretty sweet. Then we have Creeping Renaissance for 5 mana. It's a sorcery. We get to choose a permanent type. So remember, permanent type could be either creature or land, for example. And then we get to return all cards of the chosen type from our graveyard to our hand. What's really nice about this is, of course, we've got ways to get our lines into our graveyard because we've sacrificed, and we'll look at those later. We'll get a bunch of those back. Of course, we've got our creatures we can get back. Maybe somebody destroyed all enchantments. We've got a couple of those good enchantments or artifacts. We can get those back. And because it has flashback for 7, we can actually do it 2 times, which is going to be getting us tons and tons of cards.
True. Then we have Grave Sifter. For 6 mana, it's a 5/7 elemental beast. When it enters the battlefield, each player chooses a creature type and returns any number of cards of that type from his or her graveyard to their hands.
Yeah.
So we will choose elementals mostly.
That is the wise choice. Absolutely. Our opponents also get to do that, but unless they're playing tribal, they're not going to be able to get as much value out of it as we will. Plus, we get a 5/7.
True.
Nice. Then we go to some of the synergy cards. First one is Bonds of Mortality for 2 mana. It's an enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card, so it's nice. It replaces itself right away. Also, for just 1 green mana, creatures your opponents lose hexproof and indestructible over the end of turn. Now, as we understand, we can deal with almost everything on the battlefield, even our opponent's faces, because we can be able to sacrifice our elementals dealing damage, they're attacking, they're exploding. But one thing that is kind of annoying is when a creature has hexproof and or indestructible. That makes it hard to attack into and makes it hard to deal damage to it and kill it. So that's nice to have this in here as a, Narset killing card, for example.
Something like that, yeah, really nice. Then we have Skark Guildmage. For a red and a green mana, we get a Shaman, and it's a 2/2. And for red and a green mana, we can give all creatures we control trample. Really nice for our elementals. Yeah. And for 3 mana, we can make target land we control become a 4/4 elemental creature until end of turn, which is still a land. Now this does not need to tap, so you can do this multiple times a turn.
Exactly. Yeah, and if somebody kills that land, remember it was still an elemental creature when it died, so we get to deal the damage from Omnath. And then finally we have Fires of Yavimaya. For 3 mana, it's an enchantment that says that creatures you control have haste, which is nice, because then of course we can attack straight away, and also we can sacrifice this enchantment to make sure target creature gets +2/+2 till the end of turn, which may be just enough to protect it, pull it out of some damage or whatnot. But mostly it's just there because it comes in real early and it allows us to attack straight away with those elementals that come in. And sometimes they'll come in multiples at a time, and if you get 3 of those 5/5s coming in, people taking 15 damage unexpected, that's a lot. Even in Commander.
It is really a lot. Now the last of our utility cards, the last of the synergy cards, it's Mina and then Wildborn. For 4 mana, we get a 4/4 elf ally, and you may play an additional land on each of your turns, which is really nice, of course. And it also states that for 2 mana, a red and a green, and we can return a land we control to our hand and to make target creature gain trample until end of turn. Yeah. Especially with playing an additional land, we can just hit our land drops each turn, returning it to our hand, putting it down again, and creating a 5/5 elemental. Really, really nice. Yeah.
So worst case scenario, you've got nothing in your hand with this card. You just pay 4 mana, and then you can still make 2 elementals every turn. Very, very sick. Of course, one of the big parts of this deck is the lands, because we've got to be able to make sure we get all the way up to Omnath to be able to cast it. Plus, we got to make sure we got the colors. Plus, we actually want to make sure we have lands that actually come in multiple times. So let's have a look at the lands.
So we divided the land cards into 8 mountains, 18 forests, and 15 non-basic lands. We're going to take a look at our non-basic lands. The first one is Gruul Guildgate. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. It enters tap, but it could give us a red or a green mana.
Yeah, then we have Kazandu Refuge, which is the same, except it also gives us a life when it comes in.
And this is just the same as Rugged Highlands.
There we go. Timber Forge is next. This guy comes in, and it's just like the Guildgate, giving us only a red and a green.
Which is the same as Shivan Oasis.
Yeah, and then we go on to Temple of Abandon, which is also essentially the same, except this guy also allows us to scry when it comes in. Pretty sweet.
Pretty sweet. Then we have Gruul Turf. This one's a little different. It does enter tapped, but we need to return a land we control to our hand, which is nice. It will come in multiple times, that land. But this one gives us, when we tap it, a red and a green mana.
Yeah.
So it's really nice.
Good, gives us that second land drop. Then we've got Skark, the Rage Pits. Gives us a colorless mana to tap, but we can also pay 2 mana and tap it to give target creature +1/+1 and trample until the end of turn. That's pretty sweet, making one of our elementals into a 6/6 trampler. And remember, we can do this instant speed, so we can wait till we see how people block, and then we use it.
We do have some elementals that will be XX, so it will be a power equal to the number of lands, and when we give that trample,
extra nasty,
really nasty. Then the next one is High Market. It will give us 1 colorless mana, but we could also sacrifice a creature to gain 1 life. I don't know. It could be nice.
It's needless to say, we're not doing it because we want a life.
Yeah.
It's so that we can make sure that our stuff doesn't get exiled, and so that we can sacrifice stuff at any point in time we want, so we can deal that 3 damage to somebody's utility creature, for example.
It's just a sacrifice outlet, of course.
Yeah.
Then we have Blighted Woodland. It's a land which will give us colorless mana, but for 4 we can sacrifice it and search our library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped. So this land will essentially net us 3 land drops.
Pretty good. Terminal Moraine is a little bit lighter on that. It also taps for a colorless mana, and this one for just 2 mana and tapping it, we can sacrifice it and look for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So it's going to give us 2 drops.
True. Then we have Naya Panorama. It will tap for a colorless mana, but we could also sacrifice it for 1 mana and search our library for a basic mountain or forest card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So also 2 land drops.
Yeah. Then we have Warped Landscape, also gives us a colorless mana. And for 2 mana, we can tap it, sacrifice it, and again search for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So once again, 2 land drops.
Then we have Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, which will do the same. It will drop as a land, and then we can tap it, sacrifice it, and search our library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So it will also net us 2 land drops.
Exactly. Those are the lands. Let's have a look at the conclusion. In conclusion, this deck is a lot of fun. I really enjoy this deck because it's the kind of deck which explodes exponentially. You've got Omnath dealing damage to your opponent's faces, dealing damage to their creatures. You've got big token creatures coming. These are not 1/1 little guys. These are 5/5 elementals coming in. And when you've got your board set up just right, you've got an element. You play a land, an elemental comes in. We get to draw a card. We're gonna do 5 damage. Then we're gonna sack it. We're gonna get a card. Then we're gonna deal another 3 damage. And then your opponents are just looking, going, okay, well, we got to do something. We're going to wipe the board. And you say, are you sure you want to wipe the board? Because whoever wipes the board, they're going to take 36 points of damage to the face. And then everybody just thinks, we got to exile this stuff. And you think, well, I got my sacrifice outlet. So whoever's going to try and exile my stuff, I'm sacrificing it. I'm going to target you. I'm going to target your commander. It is just a joy because your board presence is so strong. You don't care if they board wipe you. You've got lands in your hand. You can get lands back. You can recast Omnath maybe a couple of times. You got tons of mana anyway. Yeah. So you can keep on coming back, and it is a hoot. And you know what? End of the day, you can also just attack people's faces with 5/5 elementals.
Yeah, that's really strong, of course. The deck will just keep on coming back because you have a lot of land and you only have to explode 1 time with Omnath on the battlefield. They gotta do something about him. If they wipe, of course, you can exile anything. You can just sacrifice everything. If you can give Omnath hexproof, it will be extremely difficult to get rid of him.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a real hard time for control decks, especially with board wipes, just like David said. Yeah. Even without Omnath, this deck isn't completely helpless, so it will still be strong without Omnath, but of course you do want to cast something huge with Omnath, so destroy all your lands and get lands back in return for that. So you have a lot of elementals. That's really the powerhouse this deck is.
Yeah.
And even without that, it's still quite strong, I think.
Yeah, and it may seem like it's a very linear deck. You think, well, all you're doing is casting elementals, but there's so many different pieces. It's like a little puzzle box with little enchantments and artifacts that all do little things that have this great, lovely synergy with each other, and it's just a blast. And no game is the same. So it may seem very linear, but actually the games are very different. Your opponent's gonna have what's similar to your opponent's gonna have a hard time. That's similar.
This is typically one of our decks that has a lot of synergy. Of course, we do use our build rule that all cards need to be under $1, so we do need that synergy to make great decks, and this deck has that in abundance.
Yeah, and so you can check out the deck list below. It's in the description, and it's also not even that expensive, is it?
It is just below $29. We did the math using all the mid prices on magiccards.info, which compares a lot of sites that sell magic cards. So you can really get this card under $29. That is including the commander and including all land cards in the deck.
Yeah. So now I'm going to ask you guys to subscribe to get the most powerful decks and advice everyone can afford. Also join us on Twitter and on Facebook. Hit us up there. Ask us questions. Tell us what you think of the deck. Tell us about suggestions. You know, we don't give non-budget upgrades because we just don't have the time, and we also don't have the expertise on all the very, very expensive $20 cards, $30 cards that are out there. But you know what? Just let us know. Put them in the comments of the video. Help other people out to upgrade the deck should they want to. I guess that's it. So thanks for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Ruud.
And this was Budget MTG Decks.